Hi everyone, I think we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming. My name is Carrie Duquez, I'm the town planner. And this is our second workshop, and actually our final public workshop for the town's Plan of Conservation and Development, or as we call it, the POCD. Just out of curiosity, can you just raise your hand? I'm interested to find out how you learned about the workshop. So if you came based on the reverse 911 phone call that you got, can you just raise your hand? I'm just curious. How about an article in the Totucket Times or both? Okay. Anything else?
Email.
Email? Okay. Facebook? Incentive to pick up your sunflower seed packet. So I will just mention that, and then I'll have Pat Gaillard do the whole project here. But
You were saying.
One project that is going on in addition to this plan of conservation and development and looking at the long-term plan for the town is we're trying to have North Branford be a destination, especially because of the great sunflowers that the farmers grow. So we have seed packets available this evening, both the shorter version and the taller sunflowers. And there are instructions on there for how to plant them, when they'll grow, and all of that. So that's just one component. We're trying to brand North Branford and really make it a destination for everyone. And in addition to all of that, we have economic development, and we're looking at housing and open space and other desires of town residents. So with that, I'll just turn it over back.
Thanks, Carrie. My name is Pat Gaillard. I'm with Mylona McBroom. I have Tyler Roth with me this evening. We're the consultant that's been selected by the town to assist with the Plan of Conservation and Development. We have a brief presentation this evening, and then we'll break out into some audience polling, and then we'll follow that up with some interactive exercises. And this will be probably a little different than your typical workshop or public hearing that you're used to. We're going to keep things very informal, have a lot of kind of small back and forth conversations rather than a more formal dialogue. So just to piggyback on Carrie, I'll start by just giving an introduction about the POCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development. And it's really an advisory document that's meant to establish a long-term vision for the town and then identify short-term steps that the town can take to achieve that vision. It's holistic. It looks at a range of topics from conservation to economic development to community facilities, but it's general enough that it'll be flexible for the next 10 years. Obviously, no one knows what issues will be faced in the community 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now, so it's important that this plan isn't so specific that it isn't useful a few later on down the road. One thing to note is that this plan does not have the same authority as zoning regulations. So zoning is actual law, controls how you can use properties. This is more of an advisory document. So just to give folks an update on where we've been, we started this back in the fall of 2018, and we anticipate completing the plan later in the summer. And we're really pivoting now from a data and analysis driven process to really looking forward at where the town wants to be 10 years from now. We have some draft themes and goals that we want to vet with you tonight to make sure that we're on the right track before we start developing your draft plan. And that will be held later, or that will be then up for public review later this summer. So really today we're starting to pivot towards the future. We want to know where the town is going, and we're starting at the most broad categories. So tonight, as I'll explain a little later, we have some very broad themes, which are just some overarching topics. Really the why. Why are we implementing certain policies? And then we have more specific goals, which specify, more specific items that the town wishes to accomplish within that theme. And then what we want to hear from you tonight is some ideas on how, some exact actions that the town could take or other stakeholders within the town can take to help the town achieve its vision. So just to give you an update on our progress to date, we started this process with the North Branford Community Survey. I hope all or most of you were able to take that. We had a great turnout. We had almost 800 respondents. We had a follow-up survey that just wrapped up a few weeks ago, focused on the town center, helping the town in its ongoing master planning process to really get a pulse of the community. Where are they? What do they think about the town center concept? Are there elements that they like or dislike? What are some of their concerns? And then we've been looking at a lot of data and analysis in conjunction with town staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission. We do have a project website if you want to know more about some of our findings to date. I'd encourage you to go on nbpocd2019.com. There you can find survey results, our data fact books, etc. So I'll just give a brief overview of some of our key findings to date, and I'll start with the values and strengths. These are things that we want to preserve going forward, and what we've heard loud and clear is that your small town feel and your agricultural character are really the top thing that the community wishes to preserve. You also have a lot of other great assets. While you're rural, you're still proximate to jobs and shopping, and overall you have an excellent quality of life. In the community survey, a vast majority of residents rated it as excellent or good. And then you're also an affordable town and have a diverse range of housing price points, which allows folks to move within the community as their life stages change. Opportunities are things that are kind of in the works or trends that we can take advantage of going forward. Looking at your housing data, you've actually performed very well. Your home sales have recovered faster than many of your neighboring towns. You've also had job growth since 2008. During that same time period, job creation in the state's been very flat, so you're exceeding the state growth rate. As I mentioned a little earlier, you're currently working on the town center master plan, and again, that's more of a process than anything, rather than anything set in stone at this point, and really being able to figure out what's supported by the community, what elements should move forward, and it could be a great asset in the future. You're making investments in your public school systems. We're in a facility right now that's underwent renovation recently. It's a beautiful building. And I think also to note, you've been able to preserve your farm uses more than most towns in Connecticut. In most towns, farms have struggled to reinvent themselves as economics have changed, and you've really done a great job as a town of preserving them and pivoting towards more value-added farming and tourism-based uses. We also heard from many folks at the first workshop that access to Lake Gaillard and water company lands is really an underutilized part of the town, and it could be an opportunity in the future to improve access for the community. And then finally, another thing we heard often in the last workshop is the Farm River Corridor and a proposed greenway that can tie together some existing open spaces and rural lands in the center of town. And finally, we also want to address some challenges head on. And every community has challenges, and many of these, I think, have to do with the fact that you are a rural small town. You have an aging population, as do many small towns your size. And it's also tough to pursue economic development in a more rural setting simply due to the lack of traffic and the smaller population. One thing that also stood out in the survey was the lack of unity between North Branford and Northford, with less than half of our survey respondents saying they felt a sense of unity. While you have made some investments in town facilities, others, notably the high school, are in need of some investment. Police station would also fall in that category. We also heard a lot about the condition and aesthetics of your existing commercial areas. So while there is some support for some commercial growth, I think there was stronger support to really improve what you already have. And then again, balancing, if you do pursue some targeted commercial growth, balancing that with your rural character so that you don't lose what makes North Branford special. Okay, so we passed out some clickers before. If you don't, I'd ask that you raise your hand and Tyler will come find you. Does everybody have one? Okay, great. So I'm going to run through a series of questions, and you'll have about 15 seconds to answer. The questions have between, I think, 3 and 5 answers. You'll notice you have 5 buttons on your keypad. Just select the number that lines up with the answer that you support. As we get into this stage of the plan where we're starting to talk about goals, we're also going to start talking about priorities. There's lots of things that the town wants to do, but ultimately has limited staff and financial resources to do everything all at once. And so we're going to ask some tough questions about how would you set priorities and amongst things that all have value in and of themselves. So we'll start with a practice question. I do this in any town I work in. I'm really motivated to find out where the line is between Yankees and Red Sox, and this will just make sure that all our IT is working and that all you know how to work. So if you just select the button that aligns with your answer, and then I'll hit a sort of countdown clock in the lower right. That means you now have 2 seconds to finish, and then we can see the results. Whew, that was tight. So this does confirm that this is the dividing line between the two. Okay, so now that our practice question's over, we'll run through some plan of conservation and development related questions. And what we want to do is take a deeper dive on some of our survey questions. So one of the survey questions was, please identify a top policy or program going forward for the next 10 years. And what we want to do is take a little bit deeper of a dive on the top 4. So the first was support and improve the educational system. A second was develop a town center at the police station in Totucket Valley Park property on Forest Road, followed by support and increase youth services and rec programs, and finally increase passive recreation opportunities. So we'll go through each of these, present a few questions on each, and then I'll ask you to compare them head to head, which will be very difficult because they all have value in and of themselves. So we'll start with support and improve the educational system, including adult ed and technical training programs. And what I want you to do is rate the relative priority of this for the town. Is it a high priority, is it a medium priority, or is it a low priority? So first question, should the town invest in public school facilities such as the renovation of the high school? Five seconds left. All right, general agreement that this is a higher medium priority, a few folks coming in at lower, not a priority. And I hope this kind of seeds some thoughts and conversations for later so that when we break out into smaller groups, we can start talking some more specifics. All right, next, invest in public school, that's pre-K through 12, educational programming rather than facilities. Five seconds. All right, this is about equal to the previous one, equal to the investment in facilities. No one said not a priority. 7 folks said a low priority for this one. All right, next, invest in adult education and vocational training programs. Five seconds. All right, so this one is a little lower down on the priority list, but still a lot of folks rating it a high or medium priority, more though rating it a low priority or not a priority. So here's the hard one. If you had to pick one of these 3 items that we just voted on, invest in public school facilities, invest in programs, invest in adult education and vocational training, or maybe you don't agree with any of these, pick 4. If you could pick only one, which would you choose? Okay, so we have some consensus on K-12 educational programs, followed by investment in school facilities. We have quite a few others. I'd love to talk to you about those when we break out into smaller groups, and a few for adult ed and vocational training. All right, next we'll get into the town center. This won't be as detailed as the town center survey. I hope most of you took it. If you'd like to see the results, they're posted on nbpocd.com. I'll just start on a couple of the high-level concepts or high-level items that are being discussed on the town center. All right, first one, build a new police station on the town center site. Five seconds. Okay, this one's really well split. Pretty balanced between high through not a priority. All right, next, relocate town hall to the town center site. Okay, more folks saying not a priority on this one. All right, develop a town green and community gathering space at the town center site. Five seconds. All right, some higher support than Town Hall, probably about even with the police station in terms of a priority. If you could invest in only one town center priority, what would you choose? And again, if you don't agree with any of the 3 questions we presented, you can choose 4, none of the above, or something else. All right, Town Green Community Gathering Space was the winner, followed by Police Station and 7 folks saying other or none of the above. All right, next we'll talk about youth services, and this is really, I think, focused on active recreation. So your ball fields and your programs. Okay, question 1, invest in additional youth recreation programs rather than facilities. All right, this shows up about in the middle of the pack. Most folks in the medium to low priority but worthwhile range. All right, improve the condition and quality of existing outdoor recreation fields and facilities. All right, again, kind of in the middle, quite a few folks in the medium priority range, quite a few in the low priority range as well. Not a lot in high and a few in not a priority. Provide additional outdoor recreation fields and facilities, so building new rather than improving what you have. All right, this is lower than improving what you have. A lot of folks said not a priority. And you do have a lot of fields in town, so not surprising, I suppose. Provide additional indoor recreation space within town. All right, and this is on the lower end as well. About even for medium and low, and then the highest number for not a priority. All right, if you could invest in only one youth services and active recreation priority, which would you choose? Okay, invest in recreation programs was the most of any of the 4. However, other or none of the above was the top. Again, we like to talk when we break out. Do you find existing facilities adequate to meet your needs? That's my interpretation. If I'm wrong, I'd love to hear more about it. Okay, and our last one is increase passive recreation opportunities. So this is hiking, walking, and some more open space oriented activities. Question 1, purchase additional open space lands to support passive recreation. All right, this one's pretty evenly split. Quite a few folks at high, also a lot in the medium to low range as well. All right, next, enhance walking, hiking, and biking opportunities at existing open space properties. All right, this scored also pretty balanced between high, medium, and low priority. Improve community access to Lake Gaillard and Regional Water Authority lands. All right, this has our highest priority out of any of these passive recreation questions yet. Okay, now our head-to-head. If you could have the town invest in only one of these passive recreation priorities, which would you choose? Okay, improve access to Lake Gaillard with 20 votes, followed by enhancing what you already have, and a few folks supporting purchase of additional open space. So that's it for the clicker exercise. Before we break out into groups, I'll just ask that we collect the clickers. Tyler will come around with a basket and we'll grab them. And before we break out, I just want to talk about our next steps and our ground rules. One of the great things about a POCD is that it brings people into the room that are passionate about different topics, whether it's agriculture, open space, economic development, or town facilities. And we just ask that you'll likely hear an opinion that's different than yours, and that's really the intent of this workshop tonight. We want everybody to feel comfortable expressing their opinions and really have an open dialogue with one another. So, just to go over tonight's program again, we're focused on the high-level themes and goals of the plan, so the why and the what. And what we're looking for, from you tonight is to help us vet these themes and goals and really let us know if we're on the right track or not. So we have 6 boards behind us that are each of the draft themes, and on the upper right-hand side of the board, we have our draft goals, and we have areas for green stickers and areas for red stickers. What we want to hear from you is, do you support that goal or do you not support that goal? That's going to help us figure out if we're on the right track. Underneath there, we have a blank space. How do we get there? We have Post-it notes throughout the stations, and what we want from you is, if you have a goal that you're particularly interested in, share with us a specific action that the town or other stakeholders can take to achieve that specific goal. So we may have one that says, improve access to existing open space properties. You may have an idea of how we can do that. Write that down on a Post-it note. So we have our 6 themes tonight. 2 are focused on community character, focused on agriculture, your rural lands, and your open space and natural resources. We have 2 focused on economy and infrastructure, including growing the tax base and enhancing the transportation network. And we have 2 boards focused on quality of life, where we're talking about town facilities and services and housing. And we ask that you visit each station, and these are some reading intensive boards, so take your time, read the goals, and provide us with some commentary. And last thing I want to touch on is our next steps. As I mentioned, this is our last public workshop before we start drafting the draft plan for the early summer. And that's going to have, in addition to these themes and goals and actions, it's going to have a future land use plan, which will be a map that shows conservation and development priority areas. And then it's going to have those specific actions on how we achieve each theme and goal. We will be following a very formal process that's set by the state for draft plan review. So the Planning and Zoning Commission, once they're comfortable with the draft, will kick off a 65-day public comment period. The plan will be posted on the town's website, on the project website. It'll also be filed in the town clerk. I think paper copies will also be available. And during that 65-day period, the plan is not touched by anybody, and it gives you all a chance to review and provide written comment or written comment at that point to the town. And then following that 65-day period, we will hold a public hearing for adoption. If you do want to testify in person, that's the time where you submit comments. If you're not comfortable submitting written comments, or if you'd just like to testify at the public hearing for adoption. So once the draft plan process is kicked off, the public hearing will be scheduled for sometime 65 days or after that process begins. And I encourage you all to stay posted on our website. We'll be posting the results of this session tonight there, and you can also find all of the materials that we've produced thus far. And finally, Carrie Duquesne, the town planner, this has really been a partnership with her. She's done a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff to make these possible. And if you have any questions or comments about the POCD in the interim, feel free to give her an email, and hopefully she can provide you with some guidance. And with that, I ask that you break up into different groups, try to evenly spread yourselves out, and spend 5 to 10 minutes at each board. And once we're done, we would like to just summarize some of the key things we've heard. If you have other places to be, of course, you're welcome to leave once you've visited the stations. But we just want to recap some of the key things we heard and then adjourn you for the evening. So thank you again for everybody for coming out tonight. Out tonight, these are always helpful gut checks for us before we get too detailed into the draft plan. Just wanted to summarize some of the things that I heard at the boards over here, starting with the tax base. There's general support, a lot of green stickers on the tax base. The one area that did not have as much support was extending utilities that align with the plan's land use goals. Several folks mentioned that was too vague. We don't know what the plan's land use goals are yet. We will be developing a future land use plan that hopefully provides a greater level of specificity, and hopefully folks feel more comfortable with that goal a little later down the line. That'll be coming later. We also had several comments focusing on supporting for existing businesses in commercial areas rather than trying to develop new. That's been something we've heard throughout the public engagement process, including the town survey. Things that were also mentioned as specific actions were sewer extensions and having a facade program similar to one that the town had previously had. For town facilities, we did not have as much support for the town center concept on this one. A vast majority of folks did not support this goal. We did have several write-ins, many focused on the town center and mentioning, focusing on existing facilities rather than building new. And then we also had comments on prioritizing open space. For housing, again, we had general support for most of the goals except for one. Higher density housing in areas with supporting infrastructure had one green sticker, and then the rest were red. So that was not well supported. We did have support for all of the other housing goals. One of the comments that we had, and I think this ties in with the higher density housing, was to steer housing development away from your rural areas for fear that it's going to encroach on some of your agricultural lands and the rural character of the town. And then finally, the transportation board. There was support broadly for all of the different goals. Some of the write-in responses, actually 2 people wrote about traffic enforcement, of speeding and other quality of life issues on your transportation network, and also extending the trolley line trail from the Old Town Hall site, connecting with some of the land trust properties. And I'll turn it over to Tyler to take us through our last 2 boards, which were all green.
Hi everybody, thanks again for coming tonight. I'll make this quick. There's quite a lot of overlap between these 2 boards. This board is preserving local character, supporting farms, agricultural heritage. This board over here is open space, greenways, natural areas like Pat said. There's no red stickers on either of these boards, full support for all of the goals and the overarching themes. The overlap that we have is a bit of pushback against motorized vehicles on private or public properties such as ATVs, motorbikes, dirt bikes, but also suggestions that maybe there needs to be areas for them to be put in place so that we can alleviate that. There's also, like Pat was saying, some resistance towards building in the town center just because it could impact rural character. And then we also have some support on this board for more agritourism, such as farm-to-table restaurants or additional wineries or small local microbreweries. And over here we have just some additional points on preventing stormwater runoff in order to protect the waters. We know everybody wanted to go to Lake Gaillard. There wanted to be some additional improvements with the relationship with RWA so that we can get access to that land. So, pretty supportive overall.
All right, and with that, we're concluded. So, like I mentioned, the next step is going to be to refine the draft plan with the steering committee and planning and zoning commission, and then that will then be posted for that 65-day period. So we encourage you all to review the draft plan when it's available and provide us with any additional feedback at that time. So thank you. Oh yeah, get your sunflower seeds, everybody.
Sunflower seeds.